Happy New Year, Rotters, and welcome to this bonus episode of the podcast that takes a deep dive into the best worst horror films of the 80s and 90s. I'm Stevie, your VHS veteran. Now, I know I keep saying goodbye to you all, but I just can't keep away, and after yet another crazy asshole 12 months, I thought it would be fun to see it out by covering one of, if not the best New Year's set slashers, New Year's Evil from 1980. And I am so freaking excited to have multi-talented director, producer, podcaster, and horror aficionado Michael Varrati joining me to delve into this movie. Michael's podcast Midnight Mass with co-host Peaches Christ is available wherever you get your podcasts, and it is an absolute treat. Make sure you get subscribed. And Michael's smash hit legacy podcast Dead for Filth is also essential listening, so make sure you hit that up too. So once again, thank you for this past year, Rotters. You guys are incredible, and I feel very lucky to have our little community, so this one's for you. Michael, happy almost New Year.
And happy almost New Year to you. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me. How's life?
I think that as far as holiday seasons go, this is a strange one, but we've had a few years of strange ones, so nominal? Question mark?
Yeah. Nice. I think that's the best response. I mean, yeah, I hope this isn't the new normal, but we've done this before, haven't we? So we know kind of what to expect. You're in LA, right?
Yeah, I'm in Los Angeles, where it's actually a little colder than usual. So to the rest of the world, it's still warm, but we're spoiled. So the second it dips below 85, everybody freaks out.
Right.
But I'm not originally from LA, so I've lived in parts cold before, and it's sometimes nice to have an overcast day because they're very infrequent. So
right, fair enough. I'd love to talk a bit about your latest podcast, Midnight Mass, which you co-host with Peaches Christ, and you began earlier this year, which I'm obsessed with. Tell us a bit about the podcast for anyone who hasn't heard it, but also like its conception.
Sure. Well, the podcast itself is truly a celebration of cult cinema. And by that, we mean not just the movie, but the cults that are inspired by them. So every week we focus either on a cult film or cult figure. And if we can, we talk to someone or involved in those movies or that person directly, if it's a person. And then we also try and reach out to an obsessed fan or another artist in the industry who is influenced by this work to kind of showcase how these are the kind of movies that once we see, we embrace and kind of travel with in our lives. And we've been very lucky over the short run of episodes that we've had. We've had Elvira on. We had Ming Stoll on. Just recently, we did a holiday episode about Hellraiser, and we had Doug Bradley and Simon Bamford on.
I can't. OG Cenobites. Listen, because at the time of recording, it's actually out today, that episode, but I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm so excited. You get such incredible guests.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and the show itself is rooted in Peach's background a little bit because she used to host a show in San Francisco in the 90s through most of her career called Midnight Mass. And what Midnight Mass was sort of a late-night punk rock drag celebration of cult cinema. And when I try to explain it to the layperson who doesn't quite know what that means, I always say she gave the Rocky Horror treatment to movies that weren't Rocky Horror. So
there you go.
If you were to go and see Female Trouble, there would be like a drag pre-show of John Waters' obsessed drag queens. And slowly over the years, those shows got melded into something else, into this sort of like drag theater where it would be like full-on stage performances. And the attendees started growing and growing. It started at the Bridge Theater, which was, I believe, a 400-seat theater. And by, the mid-10s, which is such a weird way to say the 2010s.
I know there's no off the tongue quippy little remark is that you can use for that. It's just an awkward one to say.
It's strange, but by the mid-10s, the shows would be at the Castro Theater, which are 1,400 seats.
Wow.
And then there would be touring versions, and it got to the point where people would come to celebrate the movie, but they didn't even just screen the movie. It was just about the celebration and the show. And my trajectory with Peaches is a little intermingled with that. I had originally met her while I was working on a defunct book project about the history of late night horror hosts, but we found in each other a kind of kindred spirit. And we stayed in touch, and when she took her movie All About Evil on the road in what was called the Tour de Fierce, I went along and did a travelogue where I wrote like what happened in every city. And there were like many, many cities across the U.S. That we went to together. But it was very much in this kind of punk rock traveling, carnival, William Castle-esque spirit where even though I was there to be writing, some weeks we would not have a full cast or crew. So she'd be like, okay, you're going to be in the show tonight and you're going to be a Frankenstein monster or this is going to be this. And we just really got each other. And over the years, our friendship and our collaboration evolved. We've written stage shows together. We actually did a Midnight Mass style show called Femlins, which was a drag send-up of Gremlins with Ms. Cracker and Detox. And yeah, it was really quite a spectacle, and it was a joy to write that. We've written several movies together that we're in the process of trying to get made. And then when the pandemic happened, Peaches and I, we were working on some writing projects, and I had already had a podcast. I did a podcast called Dead for Filth.
Dead for Filth, yeah.
Which was a queer horror exploration where every week I would sit with a different creator in the queer horror space and just sort of talk about their history. To me, it was my way of preserving the history of queer horror from the people who made it. And I did about 100 episodes of it, and I'm very proud to say that show was very successful. I got to take it around to places like Comic-Con, and I had some really great guests. But as you know, when you do a weekly podcast, there's a point where you're like, okay, I'm a little tired now. So we wrapped up, and I was sort of off the podcast beat for a bit. And then Peaches and I were in the middle of writing this movie, and she was like, I want to bring Midnight Mass back, but I would like to do it as a podcast. And would you be interested in joining me? And I had that 2 minute consideration where I'm like, do I want to do another podcast? But then I was like, but it's Peaches, and of course I want to do another podcast. And because us together, I feel like we're a fun team and we love to collaborate. So it really was no time at all to decide to do this. And I'm glad we did, because it's a whole new journey. Yeah. It's a whole new chapter. And, we just did our first live show last week where we did Phantom of the Paradise. So it was really great. It's been great. I love her. I love doing the show. And it's just going to get crazier.
Yeah. And as you said, that you had that instant connection and you found that you were kindred spirits, and you can really tell that the way you bounce off each other it's such a joy to listen to. It really is. It's like having your friends, just little friends in your ears. It's really nice. But speaking of that, having that connection, so obviously for you both separately, that had to have started somewhere much earlier, that horror connection. So what is your personal journey with horror? When did you begin to live deliciously?
Well, that's such a great way to ask that question. So I always like to tell people that when I was young, when I was a little kid, I was actually afraid of everything. I was a scaredy cat. This was my job and career today would mystify little kid me, because if the music on a movie would get too intense, I would run over and turn off the TV, much to my parents' chagrin. I just didn't want to deal with it. But, one of the cool things when I did Dead for Filth and subsequently Midnight Mass, and sitting with all of these creators and artists and actors and performers who live in the genre, there is a common theme where a lot of people started that way. I mean, I think you're either obsessed with it early or you come to it because there's this sort of forbidden nature to it, where I think that there are 2 ways you can go. You can always be afraid of it and just not want to deal with it, or you kind of become obsessed with the thing that you're afraid of and you start seeking it out. And that's sort of, I think, what happened to me. And the turning point was in the late 80s. There was a show on television here in the States called USA Up All Night. And they would do Friday and Saturday nights, they would host double features of cult films, horror movies, exploitation movies, sexploitation movies. And I was looking at the TV guide, because I'm that old that's how we used to find movies. And they were doing a double feature of a movie called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and its sequel, Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but that sounds crazy. And I would like to see it. And so I begged and begged and begged my mom, please, I want to stay up. I want to see what these Killer Tomatoes are all about. And she, didn't want to hinder my interest, but she also knew how not wanting to be engaged with scary things that I was. So she was like, all right, you can watch it, but I'll watch it with you. So like she made this big bowl of popcorn, and I distinctly remember that like 15 minutes into the movie, she fell asleep. And I like was like sitting on the floor, like kind of totally enraptured by what I was seeing. And how they used to do it was when the double feature would end, the hosts of the show would sign off, and then the network would just show the movie again, like both of them back to back until like the network sign off. And so my mom's sleeping on the couch, and I ended up watching Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and Return of the Killer Tomatoes at least twice through that night. And so when I woke up the next morning, I always say it was sort of like my baptism into the world of B movies, because everything was different. Because I had this sort of revelation that these are not the movies that my friends are talking about at school. These are not the movies they're showing at the multiplex. And so I became obsessed with the idea that there was this other kind of movie. And it felt, something that was solely mine, something that was forbidden. And I was drawn to that. And of course, I always recognize, yes, Killer Tomatoes is a horror comedy, but it made me slowly like look towards other things. So eventually I did find The Evil Dead and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, or like, Night of the Comet, Night of the Creeps. And
all the night ofs.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was really the gateway, and it was the beginning of the obsession. And I think ever since I've been kind of on this crazy path where I love, mainstream big budget horror movies, but like I really extra love weirdo stuff.
Right. Yeah, this is what I was going to ask. If you find yourself leaning towards that, because obviously this podcast focuses on the B-movie schlocky 80s horror, and people sometimes think that I'm some kind of anti-CGI, nothing post-2000 horror person, but different eras and different approaches to horror satisfy different needs for me. And so the 80s VHS era it's a huge comfort to me. It's my comfort food. It has this nostalgic warmth it gives me. And so that's where this podcast was born, really, in a time when we all need comfort and warmth. I decided to share what provides me with that, in hope that it has the same effect on others. But people often think that is just that one box. I like the broad spectrum of horror, but this is my go-to. Do you have a go-to or a subgenre? I suppose, is it the sort of B-movie, your go-to subgenre?
Yeah, I mean, like you, I like a little bit of everything, and I do believe that there is this merit to all kind of genres and subgenres of horror, because horror is often a reflection of society and a reflection of the times that it was made. So there's something to be gained from all of it. And I love Hammer horror. I love the era of like kind of classic high gothic, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing. But then I can turn around and look at the 80s and want to watch something that's totally, maybe borderline offensive. Blood Diner, Frankenhooker, Basket Case. These movies that are just like, there's a layer of grease and a layer of grime they're making. But also, like, there's this can-do punk rock spirit about it that really speaks to me. So, when I like have a quiet afternoon, the chances are I'm going to watch a movie that none of my friends are going to be like lit up to see, but I can't wait to watch. Yeah,
it's funny. Yeah, what you were saying about that slight grime. We're going to be talking about New Year's Evil 1980, and obviously it is an early 80s film, but the tone feels, to me, so much more akin to 70s exploitation and more than where the 80s slashers would find themselves. And yeah, it gives it a grittier tone, and it makes for a much more chilling experience, don't you think?
I absolutely think so. One of the things I love about New Year's Evil, and I was very excited that you asked me to talk about this movie, because I love this movie.
Right.
But it sort of is an encapsulation of the sort of movie of this era that I like, because on the surface, it's really simple, but it's also deeply convoluted, which of course I love, because it's premise-wise kind of genius, and then somehow they just make it murky, which I am like, great, let's go.
Yeah, and it was so, I mean, they shot it in 18 days as well, and it was Canon Film Group, so you know this thing just had a small budget, and they're like, go. I think it began filming in October 1980, and it was in cinemas in December 1980, like that turnaround. That's one hell of a turnaround. But also, after Halloween, in that era, you know, you had to be pretty quick to nab one of the holiday or significant dates to set a horror film in, right? So they were like, quick, New Year's Evil.
Which is really interesting, too, because, of course, this movie got greenlit because of Halloween. There was that that rush of holiday horror that happened in the wake of Halloween. Yeah. But I feel like New Year's Evil is specifically an outlier of a film when you look at something like Halloween, My Bloody Valentine, Silent Night, Deadly Night, because it's kind of a slasher movie, but it's also not a slasher movie. And that's what makes it sort of an anomaly. And I think that the people who are hip to this movie are hip to this movie, but it has never quite caught on in the way that it's like, it's Valentine's Day, we have to watch My Bloody Valentine. It's Halloween, we have to watch Halloween. I know some people that are like, oh, do I do New Year's Evil or Terror Train? Or I'm like, no, you do New Year's Evil because it's what it's all about.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'd only seen it once before. I watched it just recently so we could talk about it. And I don't know why, because I absolutely loved it watching it this time around. And as you say, it's technically a slasher, but it's not a whodunit. Like, we know... The fun thing is, we know we're with the killer throughout the film, and yet somehow there is still a reveal of who the killer is to us towards the end, which you're not expecting. And it completely gets you by surprise. It's quite clever. And then this preposterous reasoning of why does he have to kill on the hour or every hour until midnight? You know, all these elements that kind of don't make sense, but I'm so glad they're there just for it to be high. It's kind of high camp as well, the concept.
No, what's really interesting about this movie to me is that it more so feels like a product of the pre-Halloween 70s. There was sort of this era of thriller movies that weren't quite horror, but they were a little too intense to be just, you know, mysteries or thrillers. And you would see a lot of these like movie of the week thrillers or some things, theatrical things like The Silent Partner with Elliot Gould, which is a Christmas movie. And if you've never seen it, you should check it out.
I haven't.
It's kind of gory and kind of wild. I always recommend it in a lineup of holiday horror, even though it's not quite a horror movie.
Sure.
But this movie New Year's Evil is kind of one of these where it's a intrigue thriller about a killer that we, the audience, know the whole time. He's not a masked killer, which means he's not like a slasher in the traditional sense. And it's more so the unpacking of why he's doing what he's doing.
Right.
I love it.
Yeah, it's not a who, it's a why. It's one of those. Let's talk through it a little bit more through the actual plot. I first want to talk about Ros Kelly, who is our lead, who plays Diane. She is my spirit animal. The character, Diane, I'm obsessed with her. With her crazy blush, that outfit. And actually, it reminded me of a story because I love that she's done her eyebrows and they match her crazy pink blush. And my mum, this is a few years ago, so she had a really early hair appointment. And so when she woke up late, she was like in a bit of a rush, so she did her makeup really quickly without barely using a mirror. And then when the girl was washing her hair, she said, do you do your own makeup? So my mum's got her head back. And my mum thought, that's such a weird question. Why would you ask someone if they do their own makeup? And she felt a bit offended and was like, yes. And the girl went, oh, and just that was it. And then when she sat in front of the mirror, she realised she'd used red lip liner on her eyebrows as eyebrow pencil. So she had these bright red eyebrows like a circus clown. And it just reminded me so much of that because that's Diane.
But you know what? Maybe your mom was starting a trend. Like, that's kind of punk rock. Like,
yeah. It's so cool.
I realize I keep calling things punk rock in this episode, so I guess that's my mode of the day. No, I love...
Well, it's new wave rock, really, isn't it?
It's true. What I really love about... Well, first off, the marketing of this movie is so wild because you've got Ros Kelly, and in all the marketing and press materials of the day, they kept calling her Ros Pinky Tuscadero Kelly,
right,
like hoping to ride the Happy Days wave, which is sort of like a very, very bizarre choice. You know, I mean, I understand that she's deeply, you know, connected to this role from this sitcom that is beloved by millions, but it's like, you would never be like, in the marketing of Scream, Courtney Monica Geller Cox or whatever, you know, like it's just so strange. But they did this to Roz Kelly a lot, because when she was on the Paul Lynde Halloween special, they billed her as that in the opening narration as well. So I wonder if there's sort of like a bittersweet thing with her where she's like, well, this is going to follow me. And then the idea of playing this character who Pinky Tuscadero was sort of a rebel on Happy Days. But Diane in this movie is sort of like...
Blaze.
Yeah, out of control.
I love it. I think it's such a great character. And actually, the entire setup of the film, that she's this kind of a rock star radio DJ, and it's all about this kind of telethon chart, new wave rock chart that's live. The whole setup is great. There's something really fresh about it that really struck me this time, that I didn't actually know where the hell this was going. Even though I kind of remembered what happened, I didn't know what the point. I didn't know what the point was, and I'm not particularly sure they did. But I think it works.
Right. Well, what I love is the idea. Hollywood Hotline is the name of the show that she's hosting.
That's it.
And it's their New Year's special, and you know, she's there with this like amazing band that is rocking out, and like all of these kids like are kind of like dancing, and at every hour that the clock strikes in a different time zone, they bring it in. And that's so believable, because we have those shows, and we had shows like the one that she's hosting. I think this probably, there was a moment where this felt dated, but it swung back around to being something that's like completely understandable, because you know, here in LA we had kind of these like K-rock specials and like these rock DJ shock jock personalities, and I think that she's definitely like a film version of that.
Right.
The audience seems to like that she's not nice to them. Like it's it's kind of cool. And the fact that, you know, the whole movie is centered around her just doing this broadcast, and with each tolling of the clock, it like ratchets up the intensity. That's such a great premise.
I really enjoy the concept. And I know what you mean. She's not quite a villain, but she's definitely a sort of almost an anti-hero, because she has this status and this clear ego, and she's very dismissive of her son. And so she's not a final girl in the sense of this innocent girl that you want to overcome your own demon, overcome her demons and stuff. So it's really different. Our first introduction to the killer, though, obviously we see his face, and we don't exactly know who he is. And he puts on this, well, he's meant to be using one of those machines after a tracheotomy that helps you speak.
Right.
But apparently Kip Niven, the actor, he actually just put on the voice, because when you use one of those machines, it's all monotonous and one tone. So actually, there's no effect on his voice at all. That's just him putting on a voice, which I really enjoy.
Well, I didn't know that. That's great.
Yeah.
What I do love is that when she first answers the phone, she says, "You sound like the Phantom," which I read is...
Of the Paradise.
Yeah, is actually, you know, supposed to be a reference to Phantom of the Paradise, which is great that they acknowledge that movie, because at this point, Phantom of the Paradise was not really considered to be a commercial success or really like a film with cult trajectory. I mean, it has become one, and it's a movie that we all celebrate now. But what's cool about that is not only does this movie recognize the Phantom of the Paradise as an in-universe film, but Hollywood Hotline and this show that they're doing is kind of like The Paradise. Like, so there's like a cool, parallel there.
It's a wink. Yeah, there's a little wink there. That's nice. And also, obviously, with this time frame, I like that it sets up the stakes for us at going. So we have, it's a Cinderella moment of going, every time someone is going to die when that clock strikes. And we see him, when he sneaks into the sort of mental institute. Now, there's a lot of what I call problematic 80s sanitarium acting.
Sure.
Which is, you see it a lot when, you know, all the patients are really wide-eyed, bouncing off the walls, playing with kids' toys, maniacally laughing. Fantastic. But this is when Richard, our killer, we find out that later, he gives himself another name, first of all, which is Jeff Winters, and he pretends to be the temporary help at this place. And we get our first sort of, I suppose we've had Yvonne die, but that was in the sort of cold open. This girl who plays the Taffy O'Connell, her name is, who plays the nurse. It's an incredible performance, but apparently she got Roz Kelly. Because they did a pilot together years before, and then Emmett, the director, said to Taffy, "Listen, I will give you a part in my new horror film if you can get me Roz Kelly." And then she convinced her to jump on board.
I love that. That's some good trivia. What I really like about the trajectory of the killer at this point in the movie, and then, you know, all throughout, like you said, he kills the assistant Yvonne at the beginning, sort of in the cold open, and then we see him, in full at this mental institution. So essentially, the killer begins at the hotel where Hollywood Hotline is being taped, leaves, treks around Los Angeles, and comes back. Now, that's the real fantasy of this movie, because as anyone who has been to Southern California or lives in Los Angeles knows, good luck driving around the whole city on a holiday night when there's traffic. The most ambitious craziness of this movie is not his murder scheme. It's am I going to get to all of these points and then back to where I need to be by midnight?
Nice. So that's the real fantasy moment, isn't it? Diane's son, Derek. This is an interesting character. The bit that blew my mind was when he was sort of swallowing pills, and I wasn't sure if he was trying to commit suicide or if this is medication, but anyway, it's clear that he hasn't swallowed them. That's what I love, because he's pretended to swallow them, but you can just see them rolling around. I don't know why they didn't just cut and then take them out of his mouth and then use the next bit of footage.
Well,
wonderful.
They might have been on a schedule. What's interesting,
I'm sure they were.
So that actor, Grant Kramer, he had quite a trajectory in the 80s, especially if you're a horror movie fan. He's in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, and if you watch a lot of late night B movie or sexploitation films, he's also in Hard Bodied. But yeah, this is a bizarre role for him. He's kind of like this pretty boy actor son of our lead. Well, not to blow the mystery of what's going on too early, but I think it's important to recognize when we meet him, he's perturbed because she's not paying attention to him. Like, he comes in and he got a role on like some Star Trek-esque spinoff show within the world of New Year's Evil. And he's like, Mom, I got a role on a show. And she's like not nice to him. She is definitely dismissive, but it's also like, the woman is doing a live holiday show downstairs, and then like he throws this fit. And what's kind of interesting is there's a point where the way the movie is structured, you're supposed to kind of be like, oh, she's not a good mom because she's not paying attention to him.
But she's at work.
Yeah, but the more I watch this movie, I'm just like, wow, there's this like kind of subtle misogynistic issue with both her son and her husband, where all of the movie's like issues are like, she's not paying attention to me.
Yeah,
this is like this is toxic masculinity, the motion picture,
100%. When we do, I mean, this is jumping, and we'll talk more when we get to it, but when we do get, the killer's final speech, his reasons are very questionable. I'm like, hang on. It's as you say, it's very toxic masculinity. So, but Grant Kramer, who played Derek, so he was 17 when he got this part, and he was studying method acting at the time, and he was being taught that. And so he read the little bit that he was sent, and all it had, because we see this wonderful scene where he pulls over her stocking over his head, and then he pierces his ear through it with a pin. And so apparently it was just he was playing with the stocking in the script. And so he turned up to the audition with a stocking, a switchblade, and some lipstick. And he whipped out Switchblade and he rubbed lipstick all over his face and then went, "What do you think of me now?" And the director, Emmett, just shouted, "Commit him," as in to a mental institute. And then when he said, "What does that mean?" he says, "It means you got the job, kid. Go and tell everyone outside to go home." And I love that story in theory, but I never know with those sort of stories. It's like the one with, the one with Barbra Streisand and the gum. I never know quite how much they've been embellished, because I know as an actor, for the few times that I have tried something a little bit wacky in an audition or, made a quote-unquote strong choice, the reaction has always been like I've just pissed on the floor. They don't like it. They don't like you coming in and doing that. I've found that. They think you're weird. And if I'd done what he did, they hit the fucking roof pulling out a knife in an audition.
Right.
That's not a strong character choice. It's a felony.
I think that times have changed a little bit.
Yes.
It is interesting, though, because there is that famous story from Texas Chainsaw 2 where Caroline Williams entered the room screaming and shoving the chair under the door. And that has been corroborated by Tobe Hooper and other people who were there, that's what happened. And it worked for her. She got the job and, of course, then entered horror history for it. But I recently was watching this really awesome interview with Danny DeVito where he talks about kind of the trajectory of his career, and they went film by film about how he got certain roles. And he mentioned that he took a chance in one audition where he did something audacious and he got the part. And then the next time he did an audition and tried something audacious, they were like, no, and he didn't get the part. So it really, I think, is a gamble over who's in the room and maybe like what kind of project you're auditioning for. I think that if you're auditioning for New Year's Evil, maybe you're allowed to get a little nuts. If you're auditioning for, I don't know, Yentl or whatever, Barbara Streisand's doing, then there is a slight chance that if you like pull a switchblade in the room, it's not going to go over well. Right?
Yeah. You got to read the room a bit. And I guess also if you try it and it works, you will try it again. But if you try it and the reaction is not good, that'll just be the one time you tried it.
Exactly.
So it just depends how it goes the first time, I guess. I enjoy when we have Richard and he just sticks on a moustache. And this is when he goes and picks up the girls at the bar. Now, did I miss his motive? Are these seemingly completely random kills up until the one where he gets to Diane? Is he just picking anyone to kill on the hour?
I believe so. I mean, I've seen this movie a number of times, and I have never once, found a between the lines of, maybe a revelation of why he kills the nurse and then these women, other than the fact that they're all women. I mean, there's, this is, definitely, a male rage kind of thing. And I guess the argument could be made that all of the women that he kills up until this point, they're all kind of party girls, in a way.
Yeah.
All blonde. Well, except for Yvonne. I mean, but Yvonne is also her assistant, so there's that kind of, I don't know. The answer is true. Maybe murder's random, and we may never know the secrets of New Year's Evil.
Well, they do. They definitely shoehorn a line in towards the end about, he wants to spend a bit of time in that mental institution. You're like, okay, that answers it. No, you can't ask any questions when they say that.
Can I go back to something brief about the mental institution? In addition to the problematic things that you referenced, one thing that kind of always cracks me up is all the patients are really excited for the ball drop in a time zone that they don't live in. I always because they're all celebrating because he waits for them to start cheering to kill the nurse. And that would be the New Year's Eve ball drop in New York City. And they're in LA.
New York City,
and I'm just well, why do they care? When we're here in LA at New Year's parties, in the years when we could have them, you kind of passively are oh, it's New Year's now in London or in New York. Cool. Yeah. But no one blows the roof off of things.
That's not the one when you pop the champagne and you kiss someone. Yeah.
Exactly.
You're so right. But then who knows what time zone their brain is in, the way they're all acting.
That's true. That's true.
Yes.
Maybe they have a hard bedtime that we don't know about,
Yeah, maybe it's that. We get, when he's picked up the girls, though, we get a wonderful 1-2 punch of him suffocating one with a bag of weed and then dragging one into a dumpster in which he's hiding.
I love the touch that there's still weed in the bag when she's I mean, it's such a garish image, but when she's struggling and there's that weed at the bottom of the bag, I'm all right, whoever is the art department on this movie has a sense of humor / really sells it. And I love that woman. I think her performance is great. She's doing this total 80s Valley Girl sitch that's 100% my kind of thing. And you kind of feel for her friend Lisa, who's just sort of along for the ride. That woman gets nothing to do, both as an actor and as a character.
Just sat in a bad wig, has maybe one line, and then you've got this young Carol Channing next to it going off on one. Yeah, it's a bit...
Exactly. She gets to go in and buy the booze and get the dumpster reveal, but that's about it.
I'll tell you what, though, it did work for me. So I got a really weird feeling of dread. So, when she comes out and the car's gone and she's finding her friend's clothes, I suddenly dawned on me how vulnerable back then, without the technology we have now, anything like that happening is. You can't call someone, you can't go on the internet, honestly, I got a chill and I thought, fuck, what would I do if it was back then? And your friend's gone. You literally can't speak to anyone. It got me at how sort of helpless that was, and it felt really scary and dirty. I don't know why the police suddenly rock up exactly where it happened, and they turn up and park right next to it. Fine.
Yeah, those police are exceptionally good for what's going on.
They sniffed it. They sniffed that one out. Smells like murder. Yeah, but then again, when they find them, that's really chilling because it's it's just torchlight and she's on the swing with the bag over her head, and then really good timing with coming down the slide. But it's all this is what I mean about this feels a little grindhouse, a little sort of exploitation. There's something a bit more realistic about this than a silly slasher, and it honestly chilled me.
Oh, it's mean. I mean, like, let's be honest. There's a meanness to this killer because we see him and we get to know him and we can see him calculating and enjoying killing these people. There's a huge disconnect. Not to say that there's not a meanness or a gratuitousness to the slasher movies, but there's a fantastical disconnect when you have a Michael Myers or a Jason or a Freddy, because they're other in some way. We don't really read Michael Myers' expression. Freddy's basically Ethel Merman in nightmare form. So it's like there is this place where we can kind of separate and enjoy what we're seeing, even though we know there's something violent and strange about it. Whereas this is a creepy man preying on women, and we see him enjoying preying on women. Yeah. And we don't know why. Exactly. That's a huge difference. And I think it speaks to what you're talking about, that grime.
I do enjoy. There are two lines in this movie, two one-liners that one of them is one of my favorite one-liners in horror altogether. But my second favorite in this film is when he's got the priest outfit on. He says to the guy, "I'm a man of God, not a man of violence. Stab." It's just a lovely little setup and punchline. I love it. And then he steals the car with the girl in the back. Really enjoy this. Apparently, I read, though, that the blood feast they're showing isn't... Because in the drive-in, you see they're showing blood feast. Apparently, it's not the Herschel Gordon Lewis. Apparently, it's...
the Red Queen kills 7 times. It's in a Italian movie, and it was marketed in some areas as Blood Feast. It was retitled Blood Feast, which led to the confusion.
Right.
Which is weird because, I mean, it's not like Blood Feast is not a known property, especially at drive-ins. But I do love that there were some folks who on New Year's Eve were like, we're going to go see this Italian Giallo film.
Right.
So, I mean...
As the clock strikes midnight, I want to be watching that.
Yeah. That's... there are worse ways to spend your holiday.
Well, I would, for sure. But the girl, when she escapes, I couldn't help but notice she does one of those... She's obviously been directed, so we need you to run through the forest, but we actually don't really want you to get very far because of the frame and stuff. So she has to sort of run on the spot, but while flailing, like a Phoebe in Friends run, really sort of making it look like a lot of effort, but actually only moving a couple of meters. I always love those runs.
Well, one of the things when you work in film and make movies that no one tells you is that it in some ways ruins movies forever. And one thing that I have keyed into over the years, being a filmmaker and a director and a producer, that like... now that I know it's there, I always see it as movie walking. And it's just like when people are like just walking up the street, having a conversation and walking at a glacial pace. And the thing is of course they're doing it because you have to stay with camera. You don't want to like go zooming past the camera while you're delivering your scene. And, those scenes are constructed in a way to kind of distract you from the idea that it's happening. But every single movie that you watch, it invariably has someone walking. And
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. And this is...
I hate it.
This is the heightened, escape version of that, except she's not really going very far. She's like, I'm going to run for my life for these few feet.
Yes. It's one of the hardest things, though. I remember an exercise once in a workshop I did when we had to line up in the corner of the room and we'll just walk across the room. And because everybody's looking at you, and you're being told to do it, it's not because as an impulse we walk, we don't think about it. But when we're told we need to do it, it is impossible to do it naturally. It is so hard. So that's why from A to B, just walking is just the most awkward thing. And you can see that you're thinking about, does that hand go opposite to this one? And it's just so hard to just forget. But speaking about like hitting marks and stuff, also, the thing is, this was a lot of work, but I think it goes a little bit unnoticed. But the knife, every time he gets out the switchblade, you see the glint and you see a twinkle on it. And this was never coincidence, apparently. So Kip Niven, who played Richard, had to not only constantly hit his own mark, but he had to hit the knife at the right height and the right tilted angle each time to hit this spotlight just off camera so that they could have this glint, which is incredible. And it kind of goes for nothing unless you know that.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult to pull off. I've done shots like that, and the thing is when you are setting up a scene, obviously as an actor, you know if you have a mark on the ground that the audience doesn't see, you can use that, but it's there. You can visually see it. But to have like a place where you pop your hand with a knife in the air, there's no mark. You can't put a mark in space. So, the actor has to have that muscle memory to know, like, when you rehearse it, like, right there, you got to hit right there. And some people are really good at it and some people aren't. And that's okay both ways because it's a crazy thing to ask someone to do.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. But when it works, nothing looks cooler.
Yeah. Yeah, and it does in this. And then once I found that out, seeing the moments, it does make a difference, and it's better than an awful sound going shing. It's just that glint.
Right.
That glint tells you it's sharp and it's, it's fresh, it's clean, it's gonna make some blood. So the reveal, I think it really works because as we've talked about, we're with the killer throughout, and then you have had this line early on where Diane says something about Richard, he's not going to make the show, and you assume it's her significant other, and then first of all, the horrible freaking mask that he creeps up on her with, absolutely terrifying. And then when she goes, "Oh, Richard, darling," and it just dawns on you, I think it works so well because you're not expecting a twist when you know who the killer is.
No, it's a great reveal, and it's counter to what we usually get in these kind of movies. Usually the killer is masked, we don't know who it is, but then we see him the whole time. But her identifying who he is, which we don't know, is a different kind of trick. And I think that's really brilliant. And it's something this movie does not get a lot of credit for. The fact that, we are led to believe that he's off drunk in Palm Springs the whole movie. Meanwhile, we're with him the whole movie, not realizing that's who it is.
It's so clever. I really, really enjoy it. And this final, when we've got the killer and the victim, is so interesting because obviously they know each other so well. When the killer and the victim are well acquainted, married in this case, the fear is different. She's almost calm, you can see that part of her thinking, oh, I'll wait till he calms down, or maybe I could talk him out of it, because she knows him so well. And it makes it such a different exchange when they're on the floor in the lift. After, he ties her after this to the lift, which is absolutely amazing. But don't you agree though? It just has such the familial conversational way in which he's talking about killing her, and the way she's taking it is really, really cool and chilling.
No, it's great because I think that it's exactly what we talked about at the beginning. This is what sets it apart from a normal slasher. And during this era, the final girl, if you will, is someone who kind of happens into a circumstance. She goes to camp. The creature appears to her in a dream. She happens to be babysitting that night. But in this case, the killer doesn't arrive in her life unexpectedly. He is her life. They're married. And that is a whole other level of wicked. And just imagine the discomfort. It's scary enough that a stranger is setting upon you, but now it's someone you know. The people that are supposed to keep you safe, the people that you're supposed to feel secure with, is the villain. That's a really, really powerful reveal. And I think that her performance here is probably to some understated, but for the reason that you're saying, that's what makes it strong. You're going to react very differently to somebody that you know than you 100%. Are to a stranger, even if that somebody you know is doing something crazy.
Yes, and that's why I do think it is a nuanced performance at that moment, because this has all been taken into account by Roz, by the actress, that she wouldn't be screaming, "Oh my God, you're crazy, this is crazy person." You know this person so well. Yeah, this is very out of character, but you'd still have this sense of, I can sort this out, we can work our way around this. But he's hell-bent that he's going to kill her, only until he chains her up at the bottom of the elevator and at the end of the lift. That's when she probably goes, okay, shit, this shit's serious. I think it's wonderful. But also we get one of the favourite line in the film, but also one of my favourite lines in horror, when he's sort of got his head against her chest and he says, "I can hear your heart beating. I don't like that." And that, literally every hair stood on end. It's brilliant.
No, it's so good. And then, of course, we get that strange moment at the end in the ambulance.
Right, with Derek.
Yeah, which I think that, we're supposed to now infer that Derek is going to take on his dad's mantle as the New Year's Evil killer, which then goes back to what we were talking about earlier. This is a confluence of weird mommy-wife issues.
Oedipus and all this sort of...
Yeah, that are centered around the idea that both of these men just don't think they're getting enough attention from their mother and their wife. And it's like, okay, based on what we've seen, maybe she could be better at how she handles people. She's not great. But, again, it's New Year's Eve. She's doing
it's one of the busiest nights of her career.
Yeah. It's sort of like... Well, and there are, like, moments where we see her, like, trying with Derek, at least, where she's like, I would feel better if you came down, or, like, let's have dinner after the show.
Right.
It's kind of just like, okay, cool, I'm glad that you've got news. Mommy's got to go on live national television. So, sorry about your pantyhose meltdown,
Right. No, it's... There's something on the father's side. There's something in that side of the blood, the DNA, that's a little off, I think. I hope she's all right. I'd like to... I mean, I wonder if they were setting up that hopefully this will be the next new big slasher killer, that, it'll be a different sort of person in New Year's. Well, he actually calls himself Evil. Like, that's the name of the killer.
Well, I mean...
So I wonder if they were hoping it would carry on.
In a perfect world, what's the sequel, right? I mean, we can't wait till next New Year's Eve. It would probably be like a Halloween, too, because she's on the way to the hospital. So instead of New Year's Evil...
New Year's Day.
Yeah, New Year's Dead. There you go.
New Year's Dead. There you go.
We just get like
Sweet.
Throw a weird wig on Roz Kelly because they would have shot it like a year later.
Yes, of course. That doesn't quite match up.
Exactly.
Really thirsty.
Well, now I want that movie.
Right. I am so glad. What a punt. That was a really good shot of mine to suggest this, and then you go, I totally love this film. I did it again.
I do. I love this movie. It's a strange comfort movie for me, oddly enough. When I wrapped the third season of Dragula, directing the intros for that show, we had a particularly long last day. And I remember coming home and I'm like, I just want to watch something that feels like a good turn off your brain and warm blanket. And it was the middle of like July and I watched New Year's Evil and I realized, this is one of those weird movies that like speaks to me. And in fact, I think that everything about it is fun. I love how it doesn't quite fit in a box. It's not quite a slasher. It's not quite a thriller. It's its own sort of anomalous holiday horror. Yeah. And the premise is genius. The idea that a killer is going to kill at the striking of midnight in every time zone it is wild. I mean, like, I can see that being like a log line for a number of different movies. And what's weird is I think the rights to this film are sort of lost somewhere or like murky, because a while back I actually had a producer go out looking for the rights because I'm like, we could do this in now, like just update it to a more like Anderson Cooper, like New Year's Eve kind of thing. Not that it needs to be remade, but it's just like an idea that I think is perennial. It's annual, if you will.
Well, there you go. Very good. Thank you so much once again. This has been wonderful, and happy nearly New Year. Tell the people where they can find you and your podcast and all your stuff.
Well, you can find me just at my name on most social media platforms at Michael Varrati on Twitter, Instagram, and that's about it. I don't really use Facebook all that much these days. As for Midnight Mass, we are available wherever podcasts are found, and you can keep up with us also on our Twitter feed at Midnight Mass Pod.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this, and Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to you too. Thanks for having me.